May, can you start us off?
Page 1, please. All other sentient beings, boundless
Such
as
the
the
sky,
sky,
especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious awakening. All mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all nations. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering.
I will quickly
Establish them in a state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all nations. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious awakening.
thus
Until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind.
now to the top of page 6. In the Buddha,
Dharma and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings.
may all
Mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
may all other sentient beings, boundless
As the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness,
may they be liberated from suffering and the
causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
may all other sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness.
May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering.
May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Namo Guru Bhe Juyingi Nam Kayang Pala Choda Ume Ba Kun La Gyab Chogu Dorje Changchen Yang Yan Ren Semse Chidong Wa So Wa De Lama Gerang Taburu Jin Jilo Sha Zaho Yudu Lo Trinte Jin La Bema Bhuma Jun Dili Shera Zangpo Yang Yang Ren Semse Chidong Wa So Wa De Lama Gerang Taburu Jin Jilo Sha Zaho Yudu Jang Pushpa Hari Lo Magyu Chuji Gawa Chu Ninche Kepa Naro Panchen Yang Yang Ren Semse Chidong Wa So Wa De Lama Gerang Taburu Jin Jilo Lo Drowu Lungdu Yu Du Du Nengyu Ki Damba Po La Gyu Dagyu Marpa Lo Tsa Yang Yang Ren Semse Chidong Wa So Wa De Lama Gerang Tabu Chin Chi Lo Dro La Chi Gang La Drang Charba Ning Kyu Ki Dam Nga So Tar Kyu Pe She Pa Du Je Yang Yang Ren Sem Se Chi Tong Wa So Wa De Lama Gerang Tabu Chin Chi Lo Sha Da La Gampo Dok Zalen Osya Ki Chab La Kyun Je Me Je Men Pe Kya Po Yang Yang Ren Sem Se Chi Tong Wa So Wa De Lama Gerang da Buru Jin Jilo Apel Pamo Duru Niu Gutu Zamo Sanga Gi Ter Kal Je Je Rang Zhong Sang Je Yang Yan Zhe Sem Se Chi Tong Wa So Wa De Lama Gerang da Buru Jin Jilo Jang Zhi Gong Ki Ju Su De Du Mi De Du Ki Du Du Yong La Jin Chen Za Wei Lama Yang Yang Zhen Sen Rinchen Sa Wa Lama Yang Yang Ren Sen Se Chi Dong Wa So Wa De Lama Gerang Tabur Chin Chi Lo Ne Chi Su Ni De Den Den Ne Pyo Do Je Chang Dang Yer Me Pe Rinchen Sa We Lama Yang Yang Ren Sem Se Chi Dong Wa So Wa De Lama Gerang Tabur Chin Chi Lo Durje Janjen Dile Naroda Marba Mila Joje Kampo Pamodu Bagyawa de Kumpa Kagyo Namla Lama Namla Kyapsu Chi Hongwo Jinye Jinne Changsang Pema Gesa Tongpola Yasen Joting Wadene Pema June Sheshuda Kodo Kando Mampu Gorke Jese Dha Duge Jila Jeshe Susa Guru Pema Sede Homin Jugin Yiki Potane Dusu Sanje Kunjing Ovane Ransen Chupu Monsan Domse Baya Tsawe Lame Shabla Soba Does everyone have the handout for tonight? If you don't, please raise your hand so that we can get you a handout. Anyone needing a handout? From last week, yeah. Yeah, this is the one from last week. Yeah, it's different from the one we started. So there was a handout from last week. Yeah. Yeah. May, you might want to go look. I think people were handing out the wrong things. Yeah. This is how confusion compounds. That's why we're in samsara, such a mess. That's very Buddhist. It's very Buddhist, so. Handout, a new handout. Who else needs a new handout? Please raise your hands. Good. Yeah, I'll take one. Okay, so this handout on the front, it says a song that incorporates the four mindfulnesses from an instruction of the view of the middle way. Yeah. So this is the handout for this next section. So we have this course is organized into view, meditation, and conduct. So for the first 3 weeks, we covered view, an overview of what view is. So in order to effectively practice anything, any spiritual path, And then, of course, specifically in the context of Tibetan Buddhism, it said that in order to properly practice any spiritual path, you need to have the view down, as in some clarity about how the particular tradition understands what the problem is and what the solution is. In fact, in a certain context, Tibetan teachers find it a little amusing, if not a little disturbed, when they hear, part of it is a problem in translation, but they hear people say, like, oh, I like meditation, I like meditation. Of course, the exact definition of meditation within the tradition is a little different from what is popularly known as meditation here. But anyway, people will say, I like meditation, I like meditation. Then some of these Tibetan teachers will kind of say, what are you meditating on? And so when they ask a little bit about the view, there's no idea what the view is. And so not just that the vocabulary isn't there, but even the understanding is not there. So we think that meditation is kind of in the abstract, some sort of value-free thing that you do. But at least the way we are using the word meditation within this rubric, right, view, meditation, and conduct, it's a little different from how ordinarily we talk about meditation. I'm not arguing against the use of certain meditations to calm yourself, to manage pain, to manage stress or anger and all of that. So don't misunderstand me. But within this context of this rubric of view, dawa, and then meditation, gompa, and chuba, and action. Within this, in order to effectively practice what's known as gompa or meditation, you need to be clear about what the view is. And in a way, you could say that at the end, when we wake up and become Buddha, then the view is completely, right, cloudless, clear, crystal. In fact, even the notion of view fades away. In fact, it is said that those who are awake have no need for views. So in this sense, why there's no need for views anymore? Actually, maybe a less literal translation, but more accurate, is not so much view, but viewpoint. Meaning a particular framing is necessary. If we don't get the framing right, then we don't know what we're supposed to be looking at. Yeah, so while we're still on this side of confusion, therefore, the various viewpoints are necessary. So here it's simply called view. But actually, I think more accurate, we should say viewpoint. And within that context, it is said, awakened beings, Buddhas, they don't have viewpoints. They don't have viewpoints. Why? Because they have no need for viewpoints anymore. Because on this side of confusion, viewpoints are very helpful for us to clear our confusion. And so in that sense, then, the viewpoint is something organic that evolves and changes. Such as, like, say, in the developmental model, when you are a child, when you are a toddler, a particular viewpoint is necessary and helpful when you are a toddler. But then once you are, in kindergarten, that viewpoint you kind of have to let go. Right? In a natural way, you kind of grow out of that. Then you have the next viewpoint, right? And the next viewpoint and the next viewpoint. Now, of course, we would say, all those are kind of confused. We get layers and layers of, all sorts of conditioning by society and all of that, In this case, using this analogy of development, before you embark on the spiritual path, before you even consider, there is an inner life to attend to, right? You have one viewpoint, you have one attitude towards the world, what it means, what's most important, what's most meaningful, and so on and so forth, right? Once you embark on a spiritual path, then you have another viewpoint. But that viewpoint is also temporary because this viewpoint needs to evolve. So in the Tibetan scholastic system, in the seminary, they spend a lot of time studying the evolving views, all the way to what is called the viewpoint of the middle way. The viewpoint of the middle way actually says, that when you get to the middle way, you relinquish all views. But of course, ironically, that itself is a view. and the tradition is not completely unaware of that irony. But it's sort of saying that as long as we're still dealing with words and language, then necessarily something needs to be said. And so what needs to be said at this point is, at this point, you relinquish all viewpoints. That the only reason you even do anything with viewpoints is so that you can be rid of all viewpoints. But of course, at this point, being rid of all viewpoints is because you're so close to being awake. Then you don't need viewpoints anymore. But only until we are Buddha that we don't need viewpoints. But prior to Buddha, it's very necessary to have the correct view. Now, then you say, what is the correct view? Well, it depends on where you are on this developmental stages. So if you are not at the particular stage that matches with a particular viewpoint that the Buddha taught, then it doesn't matter if that viewpoint is supposedly superior to another viewpoint. It's not helpful. Now, this sort of thinking is so deeply embedded, like in Tibetan society, in Tibetan culture, right? Including the idea of the belief in many lifetimes. I think I've told this funny incident. Dalai Lama talked about how a group of Tibetans who have converted to Christianity came to see him, and basically to see him to say, we still regard you as our leader, even though we have converted to a different religion. But then it said, but we hope that, by being good Christians in this life, in the next life, we can be better Buddhists. Dalai Lama said, wait, hold on. I don't know a lot about Christianity, but I think we have a problem here. Like, are you sure you're a Christian, But that's sort of, this is regarding view, which is they are expressing, like, right now, what makes us good people is becoming a good Christian. So we're going to do that until, we can become better people, then we're ready for the Buddhist view, then we'll embark on that, temporarily, this is what we're going to be. So this is related to viewpoint. So the first is view or viewpoint, being clear about. So then for the practice of Vajrayana, then there's a particular viewpoint with nuances here and there by different teachers, different traditions. Yes, it's there. It's not in complete agreement, but the general contours of that, it's clear, right? So we have covered that in 3 classes. Last week we started on this second part called meditation. Meditation in Tibetan is gompa. A cognate of the word gompa is gompa, and gompa, literally it can be translated as to familiarize. To familiarize. Yeah? And so it says that meditation, yeah, meditation is not meditation. Meditation is getting used to. Meditation is familiarizing yourself. Yeah, so this particular definition, the Tibetan original of what we translate as meditation, makes it even more obvious, like view is important. If you didn't have the right view for Vajrayana, and now you say you want to practice Vajrayana, which practice means familiarizing, what are you familiarizing with? Yeah? What are you getting used to? You have to get used to the view. So this meditation, this Gompa, is then the method, the path. And as important as view or viewpoint is, if you only have viewpoint and you don't have meditation and conduct, the next two parts, then it's not very useful. I've shared before, I said, often when I give even very general audience, a talk on Buddhism, I go to a city, a place where Buddhism is very new. Many parts of South America are still like this, so people are still very curious. A lot of people come and they'll listen to the talk and they all get very excited. They're like, wow, this is really great, And of course, on one level, you can't help but being satisfied, yeah, they really like this, And then perhaps if you in the audience, yourself, you must have experienced, oh wow, I really like this, this really, and here too, I have people come up to say, like, this really, resonates with me, and yeah, that's all great, but if I'm really honest, what I really have to say is, big deal. Not to be rude, but why big deal? Because, of course, it resonates with you. Of course, this is maybe some sort of Buddhist arrogance, because it's the truth. No, but joking aside, it's like, yeah, because this is how things are. Especially, in those talks, I don't talk about things that you have to believe, which admittedly, rebirth, reincarnation, yes, you have to believe, right? So I'm not touching those things yet. Usually what I give, the Four Noble Truths and all that, just the general, of course. And that you are impressed, actually, I'm not impressed because, geez, you either you didn't understand what I was saying, or if you understood what I was saying, of course, it's like, yeah, this makes really good sense. But that's not enough. Because at best, right, now all you have is a different set of beliefs, and a set of beliefs that maybe resonates better than whatever set of belief you had before, or already starting to doubt. But simply having beliefs up in your head doesn't really do much. Like saying, I believe this, I believe that doesn't really do much. Like, I believe in Western medicine, or I believe in, Chinese medicine, or I believe in, homeopathic, remedies, or that's not really going to do much for you. That belief is good if it will inspire you now to do what? To do the practice, to have the method, to have the meditation, to have the conduct, right? The other two parts, which is the meditation and the conduct. That falls under practice in our rubric of these three things: view, meditation, conduct. Viewpoint, meditation, conduct. This falls under path. So like the Four Noble Truths, right? The path to the end of suffering. if there is no path, then all of this is useless. At best, it's a temporary kind of security blanket. Right? You feel like, oh, I believe in these things, so it's good. But not enough. Because if there's no method to bring, to bring this belief or to bring this understanding into your bloodstream, into your mind stream, it's not going to work. Simply having beliefs. Even within Tibetan context, lots of stories of teachers making that point to their students. That don't just walk around thinking, oh, I know this already. Knowing this already, but if you don't have a method to fold this into your experience, it's not going to work. So the English word that we have for practice in Tibetan is Nyam Su Lempa. Nyam is Nyam Su Lempa or Nyam Len for practice. Literally, it's Nyam is experience. Len is to take. Like Tong Len. Tong is to give, Len is to take. So to take experiences, to take that and experience, to take it into one's own experience. To take what? To take the Dharma, to take the viewpoint, and make it your own experience. That's what practice is talking about. And if you don't have method, and again, when it comes to method or when it comes to practice, right? It's not enough to say, well, Buddha taught this. And then you just go, well, since Buddha taught this, this is what I'm going to do. Well, it may or may not work, actually. So sometimes it takes a little bit of experimenting, I've said in previous classes, as much as I'm doing a presentation now on Vajrayana, on a particular emphasis in Tibetan Buddhism, at the same time, I'm not saying, therefore, this is what you should practice. Because it may or may not be the method that you can use to take that experience into yourself, to take and experience the teachings. It might be that you have to use another method. So you should not relate to method or path in a one-size-fits-all, a kind of like one cure for everything, right? Right now it's coconut oil, by the way. Oh, wait, CBD. I was just walking around town after not having walked around downtown. It's what? Like every 3 shops, right? It's CBD oil. So before it was coconut oil. So anyway, before that was green tea. And before that, I believe it was lavender. Now CBD is turning up everywhere. Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. I think beer is like all pervasive. So if you are trying to get into a business, Asheville, yes, there's like hand soap made from beer in Asheville. I thought it was like some sort of joke. It's like, no, somebody's selling it. Okay. Yeah, as it is, like soap and lavender has ruined so many desserts for me. I don't know. It's like eating soap. Anyway, so path or method or meditation is not one size fits all. You really have to experiment with it. But not experiment in the sense of like, kind of being fickle here, there, everywhere, a little bit of this, dabble, a little bit of that, dabble, a little bit of this, dabble. Again, that's like digging 20 wells. You never find water. But having said that, you have to give yourself a lot of space to really experiment, see if this works. And even this, whatever this is, yes, you get very clear instructions, but then at the end, it is still your own mind that needs to be changed, your own mind that needs to be transformed. So the technique that the teacher gives you, yeah, you do your best, to learn the technique. But how you apply the technique, I think only you in the end will be able to figure it out. And in fact, in the old system, there is not a lot of spoon feeding. Yeah, as I said, like you can't just like text message, WhatsApp, WeChat, messenger your teacher every time you have a question. Yeah? And so these days, I don't know how useful it is when teachers make themselves available like that, because then students will never learn. And it's not learning. It's not taking into your own experience. So you have to take into your own experience and even fail and struggle and all of that. But all of that is what makes these experiences arise. Then when these experiences arise, when this nyam arise, then there is the possibility of realization, which is tokpa. So they also contrast between nyam and tokpa. Nyam itself is not what you're aiming for. But without nyam, without experiencing, without these experiences. And nyam is a range of things, It can also be more specific, like having perhaps like in very intense meditation retreats, you might have hallucinations, you might have, all sorts of things going on. All those things do fall under nyam. You might have a kind of a temporary false sense of like achievement, like feeling like, oh, I have understood everything, everything is one now. Yeah, all those are nyam. So nyam is necessary in order to have tokpa, in order to realization. And so what distinguishes realization from nyam is something that is sort of after the fact. Because in the midst of it, it's hard to tell. Is this nyam or is this tokpa? Because nyam can masquerade and feel like it's tokpa, like it's realization. But it's not realization if a week later it's gone. Yeah, you're like, oh darn. Then in retrospect, okay, that's nyam. It's not tokpa. Realization is stable. Realization is like, so a lot of times what people think are realizations are nyam. Because a month later, 2 months later, you come down from that high, and then it's like, oh. So like when people go for like intensive retreats, meditation retreats, all those are usually nyam, like 10 days of very strict, and you come up with such a clear everything, and then you kind of go back, down, and then in the Zen tradition, there are some, I don't mean a tradition with a capital T, but in some places, not in the West maybe, but in Japan, they will end a long retreat with a drinking party. Part of it is cultural, which is scandalous to other Buddhists, because you're not supposed to, take intoxicants. But within that system, I think part of it is to really see, like, is it realization or is it just, so like to pull you down from the high, you sort of get wasted. You wake up the next morning and see how you deal with things. Yeah. Then like, oh wait, okay, that was all just experiences, not realization. You'll know how you respond to a, head splitting headache. Whether it's realization or temporary experiences. So, So last week we started looking first at this song. So quickly, just to remind everyone the context of this song. So this title here, Four Mindfulnesses, the author chose this name because there's a very old Buddhist category of the four mindfulnesses. And the candidates of this older category of four mindfulness is not the same as here. But I'm sure that the author purposely chose this to kind of make some sort of connections, to emphasize that this is really important. The older set of four mindfulnesses is establishing mindfulness, using the body as the primary context, then more subtle, using the feelings that arises through sensory experiences as a context for training, then using mind, thoughts and emotions as a context for training mindfulness, and then the fourth, using phenomena, like all experiences, all objects, as and also mental qualities. That's an older set. Here, the four mindfulnesses is referring to Vajrayana topics. Those four, the earlier set of four, body, feelings, mind, and dharmas, it pervades all levels of Buddhist practice. The four that is in this song is specific to the Vajrayana level of training. And here, again, the wording of this song is from the 7th Dalai Lama, who lived from 1708 to 1757. But according to the 7th Dalai Lama, the content of this song, this notion of four mindfulnesses, he said this was taught to the founder of the lineage that the Dalai Lamas come from, which is the Gelugpa lineage. The founder of the Gelugpa lineage is Lama Tsongkhapa. And it is said that the Buddha of wisdom, Manjushri, in one of the many occasions where Manjushri directly taught Lama Tsongkhapa, he imparted to Lama Tsongkhapa a succinct way of remembering what are the core necessary elements for Vajrayana practice. And that's when Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, gave Lama Tsongkhapa these four things. So what are the four? The first is devotion to the Guru. The second is the practice of bodhicitta. The third is the practice of deity yoga. And the fourth is the practice, the profound understanding of emptiness. These are said to be the four mindfulnesses. Last week I also mentioned that in a different tradition, in a different system, the tradition that I'm a part of in Drikung Kagyu, we have something that we call the fivefold path. So the path with the five core elements. Essentially, it's these four plus dedication, the profound practice of dedication. And so we arrange this a little differently. We start with bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the altruistic motivation, right? The motivation that fires us, right? That animates our practice. That says that we practice not just for our own benefit, but we practice for the benefit of all beings, for the sake of all beings. So that's bodhicitta, right? We covered some of that already under view. There we talked about the three principal aspects of the path, also Lama Tsongkhapa. First is renunciation, remember? Then bodhicitta, and the third element is the profound view of emptiness. And that is not particularly Vajrayana, but it's the underlying principles that we need to kind of appreciate. And so in the Drigong Kagyu, what we call the fivefold path, or the path with these five elements, it consists of the first one is bodhicitta, and then second one is deity yoga. Third is devotion to the guru, and then there we explained earlier, superficially guru is a human person, but that is only one of several types of gurus. The goal in the devotion to the guru is to eventually see all gurus to be essentially one same principle. And then furthermore, that principle is applied to the way we view at all things. So we'll talk more about that. Then after that, after the devotion to the guru, it said that through that kind of devotion in the guru, trust in the guru, again, not just limited to the human person called the guru, the teacher, but I would say more importantly, that core principle of the availability of guidance that comes to us from the pristine state, from the Buddha state. That then allows us the fourth element in this tradition, which is similar to what's in this song called the profound understanding of emptiness. Except that in the Drigong Kagyu, we call it the Neluk Chakchen, so which is like the natural state. So in our tradition, maybe you could say it's stated in more positive terms. Rather than emptiness, we say the natural state, the way things are, and the way they naturally are, the natural state, which is also basically then the nature of the mind. And the nature of the mind is inseparable from the nature of all experiences. And then the fifth element is dedication. And with the fifth element of dedication, in a way you could see how all these five elements tie together, because they come like one full circle. If bodhicitta is the regarding of other as more important than self, is where you start, right? These five elements. Then dedication comes full circle, because at dedication, what we're practicing is, again, we say, whatever good, whatever positive things that have arisen from my engaging in this training, my engaging in this practice, my receiving this teaching, may it be dedicated to the awakening of all beings everywhere. So you kind of like, you complete the cycle, right? You close that loop. Then this is what we call the fivefold path. So let's look at the wordings of this song in closer detail. So it begins with, the first verse is, upon a seed of the unchanging union of method and wisdom. Now, do you remember what method can be interchanged with here? Compassion. Yeah, so method is the method to awaken beings. And wisdom is that awakening. So what is the method? The method is compassion. The method is love. It's a very profound statement, you know. It's a very profound kind of like kind of interchangeable. That method, upaya, is also called karuna, compassion. Loving kindness, compassion is the method. So, upon a seed of the unchanging union, that means method and wisdom are always, they are two sides of the same coin. In other words, this is the awakened state. This is what Buddha is. Buddha is the union of method and wisdom. Sits the gracious Guru, sits the gracious teacher, who is the embodiment of all sources of refuge, all sources of security, all sources of protection, all safety is to be found in this Guru. And the Guru is none other than Buddha. Many of my teachers, in fact, my main teachers always say this. It's like, don't ever forget, that your teacher is the Buddha. And by that, they're not saying to me, hey, I'm Buddha. Yeah. Then you're dragging the Buddha down to the human, or rather you're elevating. Yeah. So you're elevating your understanding of what is the nature of this interaction. But then when human beings misbehave, especially human beings who carry this label of teacher, when they misbehave, well, because it's samsara, then unfortunately Buddha gets dragged down to the muddy level. Sits the gracious Guru, the embodiment of all sources of refuge, a Buddha perfect in abandonment and realization. Meaning, a Buddha, another definition of Buddha here. Abandon and realization. Abandon what? Afflictions. Realizing what? The Buddha qualities. So in fact, Tibetans translate the Sanskrit word Buddha into Tibetan as Sangye. Sang is to abandon, to dissipate. Ge is to expand, to realize, to flourish. That's the etymology of the Tibetan translation of Buddha, Sangye. Literally these two words. Right there, it says, right there is the Buddha, right there is the guide. Abandoning all critical ideas, supplicate him or her with pure perception. Without allowing the mind to wander, remain in the state of devotion. Without losing mindfulness, remain in the state of devotion. So here, mindfulness, literally mindfulness, the literal translation of smriti in Sanskrit or sati in Pali is to remember, to not forget. Of course, now the movement of mindfulness is something more specific, and specific in its own way. But literally here, the way it's used here is not to forget. Not to forget what? Not to forget to remain in the state of devotion. Now, loaded word. What does devotion mean? What does devotion mean? Commitment. What else? Admire. Yes, you admire. What else? Serve. Yes. Yep. Giving back. So importantly is this, you admire, right? So in fact, in Tibetan, what we translate as devotion is mogu. Mogu, again, two parts, this word, this compound word. One part is to admire. The other part is also very important. To want to be like, to want to possess. So not just admire as in, oh, so great, so great, so great, so great. But so great, so great, so great. How can I be like that? I want to be like that. Yeah, so this is not, the kind of devotion where you are forever the lover of the beloved. That you are the servant of a Lord. No, it's like, how can I be the Lord? Right? Which in other contexts, it's a sin. To want to be God. Yeah, that's said to be the sin of Satan in some monotheistic tradition. Like Satan became Satan because he forgot that he is not God and never will be God. But in this case, when we say devotion, it's not the may I become your doormat. and do what you want with me. No, this is like you see the qualities of a Buddha, and then you say, I want those qualities. I want to be like that. So may I be like you. The invocation that I did at the beginning in Tibetan, it's to supplicate, to call upon the blessings of the lineage. So there's a refrain at the end of each verse. It says, may I become like you. With single-pointed yearning devotion, I pray with single-minded devotion. Lama Kerang Tabu Chinjiluk. May I become like you, O Lama. May I become like you, my Guru. So when it says devotion here, it's talking about abiding in that, always remembering, the qualities of the Buddha. And not in the abstract, and that's why we say teacher. Not Buddha, 2,500 years ago, there was one person like that, and then that's it. Then it's so far, right? How can we achieve? But rather, the experiencing of Buddha qualities as a living presence. Very hard, because I also said Tibetans say, like when a snow lion comes into the town too often, it gets mistaken as a lowly dog. So if the Buddha hangs out too much among, ordinary, mundane circumstance, then people even don't see the Buddha anymore. But, this is to say. And I think like culturally, historically, the lamas, the teachers, especially the well-trained teachers, in some ways you could say, they function as living and walking statues. And in a way you could say, they don't have a personal life. That when they do appear in public, they have to appear in a certain way that inspires people. That inspires people to practice and to have those qualities. Yes, we might, be a little critical and say, well, how is that real, Well, it's in a way it is not real. But even that not realness is based on a deeper trust that it is possible to be Buddha. Just like in a way, right? I mean, this statue here, very nice, everything, but it's not the real Buddha. But it needs to have certain qualities in order to actually have an impact. And that's why it's not just a block of wood or an unhewn piece of stone that is just thrown there. I mean, even if we would just have a piece of stone, if we build such a nice shrine for it, then you walk in, you're like, ooh, special stone. Yeah. So the guru, the human guru, in some ways, yes, it's playing the role of a support. They call it ten. So these, we call them supports. The technical term for these are not statues or image, right? In Indian, actually, they're called rupas. And rupas means like resemblance. Rupas literally is like resemblance. So this statue resembled the Buddha. It's a resemblance. It's a semblance of the Buddha. So we call this a rupa. But in Tibetan, we say this is one of the many terms. So one of the terms is ten. And ten means support. Support for what? Support for our devotion. Support for what?
support for the blessings to come through. So then likewise, the human guru is a form of support. It's a support to inspire devotion, and it's also a support for the blessings to come through. So it is said that through the guide, so three things that we have to obtain from the guru. One is empowerment. Last week we talked about this, and this is related to the practice of deity yoga. In order to effectively practice deity yoga, we have to have received empowerment. So empowerment is to be received from actually the deity. But since we have no capacity to encounter the deity face to face, so then the teacher becomes a proxy for the deity. That's why during the empowerment, you have the teacher acting in the capacity of the deity. And in theory, at least, it's like we're saying the teacher can act in the capacity of the deity because the teacher has realized some of the deity's qualities. But it's not enough that the teacher has realized some of the qualities of the deity. The one receiving the empowerment needs to have some confidence that the teacher has some of these qualities and has the capacity to act as a proxy for the deity. Conventionally, some of the requirements is that the person giving the empowerment must have, at the very least, received that empowerment, him or herself, from him or her teacher, or teachers. So that it says the continuity of that lineage is important. Then secondly, the person giving the empowerment needs to have the ability to inspire confidence among those receiving. And then, of course, the person giving the empowerment should know how to give an empowerment, because that's part of instilling confidence. If you don't know how, then it's a little bit hard to inspire confidence. Although there are cases, there's one very famous one. Maybe some of you know this name, Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche. He is a very known teacher in Europe, passed away maybe 4 or 5 years ago. In one of the books that he published very early on, he's a teacher that teaches Dzogchen in the Nyingma lineage. In one of his first books, he talked about one of his main teachers. He said this main teacher that he had, this is back in Tibet, wasn't educated in the usual way. Like did not go through the seminary or the Shedra, they call it, yeah. And so he did not receive formal training. Not only that, he also did not receive much formal training in monastic life and in the ritual cycles of the monastery, because he mostly was in retreat, and in retreat he was meditating. But his teacher, somebody sent Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche when he was really young to go receive instructions from this teacher. And so this teacher gave him instructions directly, kind of like showed him the nature of his mind, instill complete confidence in Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche, that the mind is pristine. So then, as a formality, Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche said to the teacher, said to his teacher, you need to give an empowerment, associated with the instructions that you've given me. So in the book, it says the teacher said, what? I have to give an empowerment? Namkhai Norbu said, yeah, So the teacher said, well, I've never done it before. Then Namkhai Norbu said, well, if we have the text, would you do it? He was like, yeah, maybe. So they planned and they set up, and so his teacher, he said, would have the text in front of him, and then he would read the text, like out loud, including all the instructions of what he's supposed to do, and then read till the end, and then he said, oh, those are instructions. Okay, sorry. And then he would read like the recitation part, and read all loud, and then it will say, at the end it will say, like, all of the above is to be done with a bell and a drum. It's like, oh, okay, hold on. And then he'll go back and read and dun 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 dun. And then further down it's like, and also don't forget to light some incense. Oh, okay. So everything is done like 3-4 times. And Namkhai Norbu was trained, grew up in the monastery, and he knew how this is to be done, more or less. So he said, it would take like someone who knows what to do only like an hour, but it took the whole day for his teacher to give him the empowerment, So, but in that case, it's because, the teacher through other means basically has given him empowerment. But for formality, he feels more comfortable if the teacher actually also go through. The teacher said, well, if you insist, So I think maybe after that time, he never asked for empowerment from this teacher anymore, or at least the ritual of empowerment, because in a way, maybe it's not necessary. And in the Kagyu lineage, we said when Tilopa gave Naropa empowerment, it was in the form of Tilopa, took off his sandal and smacked Naropa across the face. And Naropa received empowerment, Yeah. Today you get thrown in jail. Don't do that. But through empowerment, so the first thing, it says the guru has 3 kindnesses to bestow. One is empowerment. So at the core of empowerment, beyond all the ritual, all the circumstance, all the pomp, all the symbolism and all of that, and it's very rich in symbolism, these rituals. And some of these empowerments, like the Kala Chakra, takes 3-4 days to complete. And then sometimes it takes years, not continuously, but you get the first part of the empowerment, you practice a few years later, you get the second part, and so on and so forth. But at the core of all of that is to basically, the teacher creates a situation, creates a condition, right? That creates an opening for the student to recognize, oh, this is my nature. This is who I really am. Oh. So then, it uses like symbolisms or principles like Buddha of compassion, Buddha of wisdom, the mother of all Buddhas. So empowerments are often tied to a particular Buddha principle, like Tara empowerment. So in the Tara empowerment, you are introduced to the fact that your nature is inseparable from Tara. Your nature is inseparable from Avalokiteshvara. Your nature is inseparable from Manjushri. It's to let you kind of see that. But beyond that, it's also about making sure that the integrity and the power of that system of training is kept intact. And the way to do that, it is said, is not just you pick up a book and you say, oh, I have been empowered. But you have to receive it from another human being. Now, of course, I'm quite aware of, the kind of power play. Right? If you misuse it, then it would be, I'm not giving it to you until you have satisfied me. Now, even that, if the teacher is genuinely concerned about the welfare of the students, then there's nothing wrong if the teacher says, you have to please me completely before I will give this empowerment to you. If the teacher is genuinely concerned about the student and knows that this is necessary. So we have the example, a very extreme example, which I don't think should be universalized, but we always give these extreme examples. Like Milarepa wanting these empowerments and teachings from Marpa. Marpa basically, put him through all sorts of difficult trials, being completely unreasonable to Milarepa by any standards. Even Marpa's wife inspired to try to trick the husband into making it easier for Milarepa. When the husband realized what the wife was doing, he yelled at her and said, you think I'm being mean to him, but you have no idea like what is necessary to cut through this person's negative karma. Because Milarepa had, murdered a bunch of people prior to that. So Marpa knows all of it. And Marpa knows what's necessary to kind of till this ground before the seeds can be planted, which is what empowerment is. Of course, that's a very extreme example. I sometimes worry when these kinds of stories are told and how human beings are human beings, these power stuff. Very good, sincere teachers, I feel, have been destroyed. Not careful in how to handle this power. But in the end, you need a powerful teacher. If the teacher is unwilling or unable to wield that power, then very hard for any kind of, real transformation to happen. But at the same time, don't rush into any of this. Always, I say, practice the Dharma. It doesn't matter, like how great it is to have this powerful teacher and all of that. But if you're not ready, then it's useless. So no matter what level you are at, you can always practice the Dharma. Okay? The second kindness is the kindness of oral transmission. That is to like read. Sometimes it's just like reading, like say this text, right? Like the teacher actually reads out loud so that you can hear. That is also, I would say, part of ensuring the continuity, the life force. So early on in this course, I've said, that it is said that until you have a face-to-face encounter, sure, you can benefit from reading, something and be inspired, even without meeting this person face-to-face. Certainly, many of my teachers said, read the songs of Milarepa. And Gampopa, for example, another great master says, if you read the jewel ornament, then you have seen me face to face. Yes, all those are possible. But then the tradition also emphasizes, but when you have kind of a face-to-face, not just random face-to-face, because at the same time, right, when Buddha Shakyamuni was alive, lots of other Indians saw him. But lots of them also thought he's just a bum looking for a free meal. Not a Buddha, and just say, yeah, whatever, right? What meet, I mean, a meeting of minds and hearts. Then, this oral transmission, we say the breath of the Dakinis, these feminine principles of awakening, is passed down from breath to breath. So we say the oral transmission is a passing down of this energy. So it says it has to be face to face. But again, there are countless examples of great masters face to face from visions. Then the third kindness is the kindness of instructions. So giving, actual instructions. How do you do this? How do you practice this? These are the three kindnesses. From how we relate to teachers, and primarily the Vajrayana teacher, these are the three kindnesses. we receive from a Vajrayana teacher. Compassion, this one, within the prison of suffering in samsara, that is without end, the 6 classes of beings wonder, bereft of happiness. Your very own parents who nurtured you with such care, right there. Abandoning attachment and aversion, meditate on cherishing others and compassion. Without allowing the mind to wander, remain in the state of compassion. Without forgetting, without losing mindfulness, remain in the state of compassion. So we have already done this under the view of bodhicitta. I'm not going to say more. The next one. Within the celestial palace of great bliss, delightful to experience, the divine body of your own pure aggregates and constituents abides, the Yidam deity, in whom the 3 kayas are inseparable, right there. Without clinging to ordinariness, practice divine pride and vivid appearance. Without allowing the mind to wander, remain in the state of profound clarity. Without losing mindfulness, remain in the state of profound clarity. Profound clarity here is profound clarity with regards to the conviction, the understanding, the confidence that my nature is pristine, that the natural state is stainless. Then within the context of Vajrayana, that is expressed through a deity principle. So that's what the Yidam is, the Yidam deity. Yidam is the etymology of Yidam. Yidam is a Tibetan word, is that which protects the mind. And that which protects the mind is your personal deity. So what that is referring to is, so you have these different kind of deities embodying kind of different enlightened principles. Like we say, Buddha of compassion, Buddha of wisdom, the mother of all Buddhas. It's not like there is a hierarchy who is higher and who is lower. And then we have like the medicine Buddha, and then we have these wrathful Buddhas. So many, many different forms, in fact. But we say all of them are equal and perfect on their end, on their side. But their particular history, their particular circumstance, the particular commitments that they made while they were on their path also makes them in some way or other more or less connected to us. Yeah? This is sort of speaking about chemistry. As for qualities, they all have the exact same qualities, but they have a particular chemistry with us in a particular way, this way or that way. So in the Vajrayana system, it says, there will be one or sometimes several of these deities or these principles that you particularly connect with. Then you will rely on that Yidam deity as your main point of reference. So meaning you want to stabilize at all times. Let's say it's the Buddha of wisdom. Then you want to stabilize at all times. At all times you work on the clarity or the stabilization of I am the Buddha of wisdom. My nature is inseparable and no different from Manjushri. So you train that. And so it says, your pure aggregates within this divine body, this is the deity. So I've said before, this has to do with sort of Vajrayana takes a serious look at the issue of embodiment. Remember the 3 levels, Hinayana, view of the body, Mahayana view of the body, Vajrayana view of the body, skin bag with 9 holes, temple of Buddha, and then finally, this whole body is Buddha. These are the 3 levels. but they do not contradict. Right? There is just three different contexts. We're talking about the same body-mind. In Vajrayana, this whole body-mind is also understood as the divine palace and the residence of the palace. Not just one, actually, if you want to make it really extensive. It's not just Buddha of wisdom. Buddha of wisdom and Buddha of wisdom's female partner. And the surrounding kind of posse, the divine posse of Manjushri, And then the wrathful one, the male ones, the female ones, and all of that is understood as various aspects of your being, various aspects of your psyche. Is recognized to be this or that deity. And so you have this kind of divine vision of all of reality. So the practice of deity yoga is to train in recognizing this pristine nature of not just yourself, but of all things, of all beings. And you begin by training in relation to the Guru. If you cannot perceive the Guru as deity, it's going to be hard to perceive everyone as deity. But unfortunately, it's also true that people get lost in the whole Guru business so that they will poop on everyone bluntly in order to say my Guru is so pristine. And along the way bully everybody else and disregard everybody else as pristine. Then it defeats the very purpose. Why do you relate to the Guru as pristine, as Buddha? So that you can relate to everybody else as Buddha. So these two topics of mindfulness are closely linked. Then one of our teachers, Gajah Rinpoche, says, and what is this deity at the end of the day? At the end of the day, what is this deity? Bodhicitta. Love and compassion. That this is love and compassion appearing in the form with a name, with a set of ideas, but it's basically love and compassion. So many people say, oh, I cannot practice deity yoga, I cannot visualize, or my visualization is unclear, how do I improve this and that? Oh yes, there's many techniques, But this teacher in Dugung Kagyu, Gajah Rinpoche, he says, it's because your love and compassion is still kind of shaky. He says, work on that. When that becomes stable, then deity becomes easy. And these are the special instructions. Yeah, these are like the oral instructions from someone who have experienced it and not just read books, Say, don't worry about, whether you can see or you cannot see all the details, how many hands, how many feet, how many heads. He says, work on love and compassion. Because the deity is none other. The deity is the embodiment of love and compassion. Then, love and compassion, not in the ordinary mundane sense. Love and compassion that arises from a profound understanding of the natural state. You see how it's all tied together. In fact, it's just one topic, divided into these aspects. That the natural state, or what we call the profound view of emptiness, is none other than love and compassion. It's none other than the divine form of the deity. It's none other than the nature of your own mind. It's none other than your Guru. So this is sort of like the core kind of meditation, the core practice within Vajrayana is to train in this particular set of these 4 or 5 points. But they're not 5 separate things, 4 separate things. It's just like, in order to instruct right? Lots of words, lots of categories are generated. But in reality, there are no lines, you know. It's not like, oh, now I'm in the bodhicitta room, 10 minutes, Okay, now you go to the, the, the sauna room, another 10 minutes, Then you jump into the icy water for 3 minutes, It's not like that. These 4 or 5 topics of mindfulness, they are all pointing at the very same thing. So let's take a quick break. I saw that there's a spread of offerings for deities. So please go enjoy the offerings as deities. Then there's no suffering. Otherwise, those offerings can become suffering. Now, we'll take a short break, stretch a little if what you need is a stretch and not sweets. There's also nuts. Silence. So this next verse in this song, the sky of ultimate luminosity, the nature of phenomena. The luminosity here, right? Of course, all religions talk about light and imageries of light and clarity and luminosity, yeah? And then people talk about seeing light, like quite literally light, yeah, that the eye sees, right? Here, it's a symbol. Yeah, we're not talking about that kind of light. Yeah, here, luminosity is talking about awareness. It's talking about awareness. It's that pure awareness that is independent of what appears to that awareness. So that which experiences things. So that is kind of compared to the sky. So it's telling us, the quality of awareness is like the sky, meaning it cannot be pinpointed, it cannot be fixated on. You cannot say, oh, this is the center of sky, or this is the periphery of sky. Sky has no limitations and reference points. So it's vastness, it's vast, open, without characteristics. Or if you want to say, if there is a characteristic, that is the characteristic of this awareness, of this nature of the mind. So the nature of mind is vast and open, and sometimes the word emptiness is used. So emptiness does not mean negation or something negative, right? like nothing. It's not talking about nothing. It's talking about no limits. But it's not no limits as in like space, like literally has no limits, right? Because it also has what's poetically called luminosity. That means it's not just a mere absence of stuff or absence of something fixed, but it also has this dynamic awareness. The mind has the capacity to know. That's the definition of mind. So the sky of ultimate luminosity, the nature of phenomena, the nature of all experiences is this pristine awareness. It pervades the mandala of knowable things. Mandala is a Vajrayana vocabulary. It's referring to the palace and the residence of the divine palace. Yeah, so like it said that this body is a mandala. This body and mind is the mandala. The physical body is the palace. The awareness is the deity. Is the residence of the mandala. So here it says, in fact, this mandala of knowable things, whatever appears and exists, meaning everything is to be experienced as this divine mandala. The way things actually abide beyond expression, right there. So it's saying this is the nature of things. Now this is the point about the natural state, which is also emptiness. Abandoning mental fabrication, look into the essence of empty clarity. So it says, give up. All this mental fabrication of yes, no, is not. Cut through all of that. And how do you cut through that? You cut through that by practicing what came before, deity yoga, and dropping. So remember that when they talk about the guru, it says what? It says abandoning all critical ideas. There it's talking about, in that context, it's like, don't keep finding faults. Now, the teaching about don't keep finding faults, right, in relation to your guru, it's also given, simultaneously it also says, before you actually train with someone, and develop this relationship of student and teacher, you need to really understand each other. Although the language is to check. But I think I don't like that language, because to check has this sense of like something suspicious going on. You're going to check, you're going to investigate. Check them out, and especially these days, we're so busy just checking this out and checking that out, and nothing we ever commit to, right? So to translate this notion of like you check your teacher for 12 years, and the teacher checked the student for 12 years before you become teacher and student, I would rephrase it as you try to understand each other, and have a relationship on that level. But it's also important to understand this is not a relationship with friends. I know we like to say that, oh, he's my friend, he's my teacher. It won't work. You can't have it both ways. It's even crazier, I think, if you say, oh, then this is my wife, this is my husband, this is also my teacher. I mean, head blown. I'm not saying it's impossible, but imagine how complicated it gets. Just the teacher and student is complicated enough. And you want to add other layers to it. It's like, oh, well, you're on your own. In fact, Milarepa said, it's best to be 3 valleys away from your teacher. So many reasons, One is, of course, you don't fall into the dependent relationship. Because on the one hand, it says you need to be so devoted to your guru, right? One possible problem, if you're always there, is that you are waiting to be fed, like spoon feeding. Oh, you're so great, guru, you're so great. It's not going to help. This is not things that they write in the text. I'm just telling you from my experience. Like, I think when Milarepa says live 3 valleys away, it's so that he can continue to develop his devotion, but there is not the downside of becoming a puppy waiting for, outside the teacher's door for some affirmation, for some confirmation. No, he's in a cave. But he has such devotion to his teacher so that he remembers his teacher saying, the best thing I ever give you are my instructions how to practice. So then, every time he wants to give up, because of his devotion to his teacher, he goes back to the practice, and he goes back to the practice, and he goes back to the practice. So the training with the teacher, where it says, abandon critical ideas, is also given in the context of, you should also, learn about this person. And 2 qualities I mentioned, right? Most essential. Do they care about your ultimate welfare? That's one question that you need to settle, right? If you're going to accept someone as your teacher. Teacher in this sense. Second, do they know more than I do on this subject? Even if they really care about your ultimate, if they don't know more than you do on this subject, not very useful. On the other hand, if they know more than you do on this subject, but for whatever reason, because it's not the case that if they don't care for your ultimate welfare, it doesn't mean that they don't care for someone else. That means there's no karmic chemistry. Then just equanimity, like, okay, we can be, I can learn from this person on another level, but don't try to force that kind of Vajrayana student-teacher relationship. Then again, it's not the case that you either accept someone as that kind of teacher, or you're like, I don't know. No, you can still. In fact, you learn from everyone. So coming back here, abandoning mental fabrication, look into the essence of empty clarity. Now, this empty clarity, this notion, is already taught on the Mahayana level, where it says that things are empty, but they also have an appearance. So in the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness form. It's already taught on the Mahayana level. But here, to take this principle into the Vajrayana level, then what we're talking about here is empty is still the same empty, meaning open, without limits, without solidity, without being stuck. It's not static, it's dynamic. All of that empty is still the same, whether it's in the Mahayana level or in the Vajrayana level. But now clarity, in this case, we're talking about the appearance of deity. So it's not just mere form, but divine form. So here it is said that on the Vajrayana level, when you practice form is emptiness and emptiness is form, it's not ordinary form, the form that we see. We're now talking about divine form. And so it says, then this practice of empty clarity is heightened in a way that it is not on the Mahayana level. And you say, well, what does this really mean? Again, there's so many ways of explaining this, and some of these ways, I'm not capable of explaining. But what I can tell you from experience is that the Vajrayana quality of talking about emptiness and form as two sides of the same coin has an added kind of oomph to it. When the form is not just this form, when the form are like these forms, like these divine qualities and principles as the form, then it kind of takes you to a, almost you could say, I don't like this word, but I can't find a better way of expressing. It's like all your experience becomes enchanted, like magnified. So you're not just understanding that, oh, everything is empty and appearing, but appearing as deity. So it says all forms are deities, all sounds are mantra, and all thoughts and emotions is wisdom and compassion. Yes. Yes. So mythically, it's the notion of Buddha field, of Buddha realm. We say this whole place is the Buddha realm. So in Vajrayana meditation practice, we call them sadhanas, which is means of accomplishments. Right? We visualize, although that's again a very limiting word, but it's not so much the visual, although there are some traditions that emphasizes the visual. But it's more about, like in the verse before, it says, practice divine pride and vivid appearance. Divine pride means, this confidence that I am deity. And vivid appearance means the mind is clear, sharp. And in this case, is clearly as deity. So in a way, yes, you're still kind of tricking the mind so that it is not mundane. And so it says, without clinging to ordinariness. So in Vajrayana, it says that the main problem why we experience suffering is because we have committed ourselves to ordinariness. This is not the ordinariness talked about in Zen. In Zen, ordinariness is a different kind of ordinariness, which is, I would say, the equivalent of divine in Vajrayana. This vocabulary difference. Even within Vajrayana, like in Kagyu tradition, the tradition I'm from, we said that the ordinary mind is the Buddha mind. But here, ordinariness means, I think a better word I would translate as mundaneness. What you consider to be mundane. Like what you consider to be drudgery, what you consider to be just mindless, waking up, going to work, paying bills, taking kids to, soccer, blah, 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 all of that. Now, on the Mahayana level, you have to train to see how all of that is empty. So that in the midst of all of that, you don't get dragged down. You have some freedom, right, in the midst of the drudgery. Whatever you experience to be drudgery. On the Mahayana level, you are taught, to train to see how there's no essence to this. There's no, you don't need to be trapped by this. But on the Vajrayana level, not only that, but that in fact is not drudgery. In fact, going to work is for the benefit of all beings. In fact, paying bills is for the benefit of all beings. In fact, feeding your family is making offerings to the deities. Planting flowers is making offerings to this Buddha field, this Buddha realm. It's adorning the Buddha realm. It's beautifying the Buddha realm. So that all your actions, all your activities that you ordinarily do takes on a heightened understanding. It's a heightened state. It is to see things the way that, William Blake and his poetry sees things. In a single dewdrop, the whole universe is present. In the blossoming of a flower, a whole Buddha land is there. That's the Vajrayana vision. That's the divine vision that we're talking about. So this is kind of at the heart of what we talk about when we say Vajrayana practice. This Saturday, we have a few minutes left. This Saturday, Sunday, sorry, not Saturday, we have a special program, which is we're going to come together. What time? 9, 10? 9 to 1? Yeah, 9 to 1. So it's a half-day practice of this Buddha of Compassion, Avalokiteshvara practice. Avalokiteshvara of the 6 realms, teachings and practice. So I will give the instructions and the explanation of a particular sadhana, a particular means of accomplishment, where we basically kind of get a felt sense of like being the Lord of Compassion. Again, the word visualization is a little inaccurate. But it's to develop this felt sense of like, being the Lord of Compassion. And then working with what's known as the 6 realms. The 6 realms is basically classical Buddhist cosmology, which says that we human beings are not the only beings that exist. Aside from the human realm, there's 5 other realms of existence. But these 5 other realms of existence, together with the human realm, they each have a particular neurosis, if you want to call it that, or more technical Buddhist term, klesha, afflictive emotion. They have a particular type of neurosis that produces the particular characteristic of suffering of each of these realms. So we say the God realm is principally tortured by pride and all the faults that come with pride. The demigod, the demonic realm, the principal kind of neurosis is jealousy and all the blind spots that come from jealousy. Human realm is desire, ambition. Desire in that sense, ambition. Then the next realm is the hungry ghost, or the animal realm. That is said to be, the exact word is like stupidity. But obviously, we're not saying that animals are stupid. More accurately, it's saying how driven by instincts, can't make moral choices for the most part, just driven by instinct. Then the hungry ghosts, hungry spirits, is by greed, avarice. Then the hell realms is ill will and hatred. That's the main kind of neurosis that produces all the kinds of suffering associated with, quote unquote, the hell realms. Now, you're not required to believe in the actual existence of these other realms of existence, although traditionally Buddhists do believe. But you can already see how, in the course of one day, how many realms we move in and out of. Right? So this practice is a practice of what we say purifying these 6 realms. Purifying all these types of experiences that even within this lifetime as a human being, we cycle through these 6 realms up and down all the time. So if you have time, like I said, this course, we don't actually sit down to do practice. It's a theoretical to give you a view of, what is involved in Vajrayana practice. Of course, after you finish the course, if you say, oh, I would like to belong to a community that practices these things, then after the course finishes, basically Wednesday nights from 7 to 9 is our Kagyu Sangha. That's what we do. Various aspects related to this topic. Vajrayana, not specifically this. But if you want just a taste of Vajrayana sadhana practice of deity yoga, come this Sunday. It's from 9 to 1. Now, questions about what you just heard tonight. We don't have a lot of time left, but at least 1 or 2 questions might be good. Yes?
I was going to ask you a lot of how do people relate to dreams to giving their experience?
Okay, so the question is, when I talked about Nyam as these experiences, what about like visions and dreams? Yeah? So definitely, visions and dreams fall under the category of Nyam. And in fact, in traditional Tibetan biography of practitioners and great teachers, they're filled with things like this. So as I said, without Nyam, Tokpa is not going to arise. Realization is not going to arise. So you need Nyam. And Nyam arises from committing to the practice, being disciplined. And when you commit to the practice, then experiences arise. Some of these experiences are pleasant. Some of the experiences are unpleasant. Then we tend to label the unpleasant ones as something gone wrong. Now, if you have that attitude, then yes, something has gone wrong. But if you have the right attitude and you say, well, in the context of doing practice, all sorts of Nyam is going to arise. But the what in Zen it's called the mind that has preferences is what creates happiness and suffering. And the more rigid our preferences, then the heavier our happiness and suffering. So the 3rd patriarch of the Zen tradition, he says, in his very famous song, he says, the way, the way here meaning like the way things are and the way that we have to practice, he says, the way is actually very simple and straightforward. Except that human beings have preferences. Then happiness and suffering arises. Okay? Likewise with Nyam, So sometimes we get stuck with pleasant Nyam and then get led astray. Sometimes we get stuck with unpleasant Nyam, then we get led astray as well. So if they can equally lead us astray. But at the same time, if you don't have Nyam, then it's hard for realization to arise. It's almost like Nyam is the kind of raw material that then turns up that is the opportunity for you to transform that into stable, into growth. So in other words, if you don't leave your house, right, and you just want to be safe, you will never grow. So again, also lots of stories of how some people get led astray by pleasant Nyam, great visions, great dreams, and this and that. Especially back to the story of the early Kagyu masters. Gampopa, one of Milarepa's chief disciples, were having all these amazing visions, Like one time he said, he saw the 5 Buddhas, like the 5 principal Buddhas, which kind of summarizes the entire Vajrayana system. He had an amazing vision of 5 Buddhas, all like appearing in front of him. This fantastic experience. So he was very excited. He went to Milarepa, He said, I had this experience, And then Milarepa said, you ate too much last night. Indigestion. Yeah. Now, of course, you and I, our indigestion probably don't produce, the 5 Buddhas, Mine just tend to produce, nightmares, I mean, really. But in in Gampopa's case, because he was doing so much purification, but it also led to the hallucination of the 5 Buddhas. Another time, Gampopa had a vision of like the 1,000-arm, it was here, the 1,000-arm Buddha of compassion. Then Milarepa said to him, your belt is too tight, loosen it, it'll go away. Yeah. In the Zen tradition, there are some stories like that. A meditator, after some very intensive training, he started to have negative Nyam. So he kept seeing a big spider trying to eat him. Whenever he entered into meditation, a big spider would come eat him. So he got terrified and he didn't want to meditate. So he told his teacher, and the teacher said, okay, but you have to meditate, if you don't continue, it's not going to work. Then he said, well, what can we do? The teacher said, okay, I'll tell you what. I will catch the spider for you. But there are many of these kinds of spiders, I want to make sure that we catch the right one. So students said, well, how do we do that? He said, okay, have an ink pad and brush, next to where you're meditating. So the next time the spider comes up, try to mark it with an X. So students say, okay. So he put the ink and brush, meditate. And before long, the spider turned up. So he painted the spider with an X. And after the meditation, went to the teacher very excitedly. It's like, I succeeded in marking the spider. Teacher said, good, good, good. And then he said, okay, do something. Teacher said, yeah, I will. And the teacher said, lift your shirt. And he lifted his shirt, and on his stomach is the X. It's, again, related to eating too much or something. That it can come like this. So Nyam can come in many forms. The important thing is that when they come, you get the right guidance to cut through and make a breakthrough. There are opportunities for breakthrough. Nyam in that sense. Then there's Nyam in the less dramatic sense, like life experiences that come up as you engage in the practice. Sometimes things will go really well, but that without visions, right? Things will go really well. You might say, "Oh, I'm going to join the Kagyu Sangha," and then things will go really well. But don't naively think, "Okay, great, it's going to be like this." Then you'll get led astray. Likewise, if you do the practice after a while, things are not going right. Again, if you don't have someone to guide you, you might think, "Oh, this is going wrong. This is all wrong. This is all bad." Then you get led astray as well. Any other question? not. So at the end, we always do dedication. In this case, we don't need to repeat any words. Just take a few moments to reflect on, whatever good, whatever beneficial things that we have gathered, we have experienced this evening. All the good, and all the good that is not just yours. Even think about anyone here. You can think of like gathering all of that together, and think of you possessing all of that, right? Including other people's good, other people's benefit. It says, as a skillful way, you temporarily even behave as if you are greedy for that good, and you take it yourself. Take it and say, this is all mine. So even if you don't know exactly what profound insights or experience someone might have, but you say, if it's there in this room, I'm going to take that as mine. But then after taking that as yours, then you say, but all of this that I have taken together, amassed together, collected together, this is only meaningful if I put all of this in the direction of my own awakening from confusion, so that I can be in a better position to benefit others, so that others as well will awake from confusion. So spend just a few moments thinking of this, and in this way, really from the heart, do this dedication, dedicating this merit to all beings everywhere for the alleviation of suffering and for the awakening into the Buddha state. Thank you for coming. On Facebook, we made an announcement about tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is open Sangha from 7:30 to 9. The format for tomorrow night will be slightly different. In the past, usually it's half an hour of guided meditation, 10-15 minutes of tea time, 45 minutes of me giving a teaching based on the early Buddhist sources. But tomorrow I'm going to do an extended guided meditation on mindfulness of the body. Might be interesting to some of you. It's a very different technique from like Vajrayana practice, but this comes from the earliest layer of the Buddhist tradition. Then it's my intention that in the month of October, all the open sanghas will be focused on this mindfulness of the body. But if you want a taste of what is to come, if you have time, come tomorrow. And then in October, all the Thursdays in October, when I'm going to be gone all of September, and then I'm going to be gone most of November. But October I'll be here, so all the open sanghas will be on this. Okay? So have a good night. Thank you.